What is up, Canada? What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and today's Saturday, so we thought we'd try something a little bit different, do our news roundup, everything COVID-19, government stimulus, and any other silly shenanigans going on in the world of Canada. We thought we'd update you guys today on a Saturday live. So first of all, I'd love to get your feedback. Do you like the idea of us doing these live on Saturday afternoons? Because if you don't, there's probably something else myself and Peter could do with our Saturday afternoon. So let us know in the comments if you enjoy these news updates. But specifically today, we're going to be talking about a lot of things Canadian COVID related. One, if you guys weren't paying attention, there was a little talk of a universal basic income. So I'm going to tease that, but we'll probably cover it next week as well. We're going to be talking about that third approved COVID-19 vaccine in Canada and what that could mean for the general population. And were you guys paying attention to the fact it's only 62% effective? I'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions, and your comments on all that as well. How much do you know about the latest pandemic-related travel measures? So have you been paying attention to what's going on with these quarantine hotels and, whether you actually have to stay at them or whether you can just ignore them? And it's like, as long as you don't listen to what Simon says, you can just walk past them. Really interesting stuff going on here where there seems to be some misinformation from some government leaders. And then finally, why has the city of Toronto given a bill worth nearly $200,000 to a small business owner? Do you guys remember way back that barbecue joint, the original lockdowns, all that craziness? Well, there's an update and he's being hit with a massive bill. But specifically, let's first go into our first story today and talk about Health Canada announced that it has approved the Oxford AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine. Say that 3 times fast in the mirror at midnight, and I don't know, the COVID quarantine or the COVID police appear or something like that. But there's a link to everything we're talking today. Today's article is from Global News, and this is the third COVID-19 vaccine to be approved for use in Canada. Like Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, the one from AstraZeneca will be provided to Canadians in 2 doses. The second dose can be received 4 to 12 weeks after receiving the first one. Individuals aged 18 plus will be eligible for this vaccine. And unlike the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, however, AstraZeneca's does not have as high of an effectiveness rate. So this is what blew my mind. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Their vaccine is 62% effective, while Pfizer and Moderna's vaccines are said to be as high as in the high 90s. So 62% effective. It's actually been a long time since I even got a mark of 62. I went through my entire university career not getting a mark lower than 69 in a course. 62% effective, oh my goodness, that's a D-, right? If I remember how that shit works. So what, you guys are on points now, or how do they do it in the modern school era? But either way, you're essentially 12 away from not having got half of it right. So I'm very curious about maybe what some of the, the unintended consequences of taking this, right? Are there some, I'm having a blank here, but not sidesteps, symptoms, side effects. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, Peter. What are the side effects behind this? Because for it to be 62% effective, we're essentially a coin toss now. So what do you guys think about a vaccine that's a coin toss? I think my biggest frustration here is I can only imagine the crazy money that's going to be thrown at this company, the amount of the millions of dollars in profits they're going to make off of something that essentially doesn't work, right? 62% effective. I mean, if you were 62% effective at your job, would your boss keep you? Let me know in the comments section. And maybe we should just get these vaccine producers to get into your industry. This vaccine doses can be stored and transported at temperatures of 2 degrees to 8 degrees Celsius for upwards of 6 months. And then I guess one thing I skipped over here is a sizable plus about the AstraZeneca vaccine is it could theoretically be more readily available in specific communities because it's got a more a broader storage range, right? Where my understanding is those other vaccines need to be stored in ultra cold storage solutions, which isn't necessarily readily available everywhere. So according to Global News, Canada already has a deal in place for 20 million vaccines from AstraZeneca. So we're already buying 20 million vaccines that are 62% effective. That sounds like a good plan. Especially because remember all those quick tests that we were talking about in previous stories that were just sitting there not being used? Yeah, I'm sure these vaccines are going to find a similar life. And so Prime Minister Justin Trudeau recently said he expects these doses to be delivered prior to Canada Day. Canada will also receive upwards of 1.9 million additional doses of AstraZeneca vaccine through COVAX, the Global Vaccine Sharing Initiative. And this too is slated to occur ahead of Canada Day. Now, the third vaccine has received approval by Health Canada. It's possible that national and provincial vaccine administration timelines could be adjusted. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions. Would you take a 62% effective vaccine? Let me know. Love to hear your thoughts and your opinions in that comment section. Otherwise, let's talk about the second story of the day. This one from CBC News. This is an update on the air travel rules for Canadians. So on February 22nd, new travel measures went into place for most air travel passengers entering Canada. Considering that these measures include a number of rules, steps, and instructions, travelers are now expected to follow. Before we even get into this, one of my big frustrations is who here is even able to keep track of all the new rules and regulations? I literally have no idea these days. Are we gray zone, red zone? Is it tier 5? Are we DEFCON 1? What the hell is going on? There's so many acronyms that I just can't even keep track anymore. But is this the shit hits the fan? So anyways, going through this. And so I thought it'd be sensible to go through them together. So let's go through some of these restrictions, some of the new rules. I always think of It's Sunny in Philadelphia. There's a recent episode in one of their more recent seasons where they all magically turned black. It was like a Freaky Friday, and they turned black overnight, and they're like, what are the rules? And they're trying to figure out the new rules and how to navigate the new world they find themselves in. Literally, it's like Groundhog Day every day here, but the rules change every single day rather than being the exact same. So quarantine hotel details. Now, this is coming from Canada.ca, so this is a government source. So, you probably can rely on it the same way you can rely on sources from CRA. To start with, you need to book your mandated 3-night stay at a quarantine hotel before departing for Canada. It is recommended that you do this at least 48 hours prior to your flight. The government of Canada has provided a list of authorized hotels for these bookings. You can find the link in below in the video description, guys, if you want to jump over to it. But remember, inbound flights for international travels will now only be stopping at Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. So just those 4 airports now essentially are the only international airports we have anymore. So can we even brag about having an international airport anymore in Canada or in London, Ontario? Because we used to brag about that. As such, the designated hotels are within close range to these airports. Unfortunately, there's not an online reservation portal because that would be too easy for these bookings. Rather, you have to call and book your stay. So we've got the phone numbers. They are in the video description down below. And calls will be answered from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 days a week. Calls received after hours will be limited to emergencies. And in case you don't have a pen handy, these numbers will be available in the video description, like I just mentioned. And so some of the information you're going to need to be able to provide is the traveler names, the date of birth, the gender, the arrival city and date, as well as payment information, special requests and accessibility concerns, pet information, as well as your email address. And so an email confirmation regarding your booking will be sent to you within 4 hours. And although the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau initially told Canadians to expect paying upwards of $2,000 for the hotel, the pricing is truly up to each hotel's discretion. So it actually varies. So you may want to call around and talk to a few different hotels, because otherwise, if the first one you call, they don't actually have to have a set price. And so, the pricing, however, is designed to include costs associated with food, room, security, transportation, and infection prevention. So all that, in theory, should be bundled into your cost of the hotel. Once you're at the airport, on the day of your departing flight, you will need to present a negative molecular COVID-19 test no more than 72 hours old. There's just so much to keep track of these days, guys. It's tough. So you will need to enter your test and arrival information into the government's online screening portal app, ArriveCan. It's imperative that you keep your ArriveCan receipt details readily available. While in flight, you are expected to wear a mask and inform a flight attendant immediately if you feel symptomatic at any time. As soon as your flight touches down, remain masked and have your passport at the ready. A border agent will subsequently ask eligibility and health screening questions, including what your 14-day quarantine plans are. You will also need to present your ArriveCan receipt with the test results. At the time, you will be required to take another molecular COVID-19 test and collect a second test to be used later in your quarantine process. If you exhibit COVID-19 symptoms, test positive for the virus, or provide unsatisfactory quarantine plans to the border agents, you will be directed to a government quarantine facility. Now, one of the big things here is it seems like everyone's just been told they have to go there, but there's a lot of confusion. And so anyways, if you are deemed healthy enough to continue forward, you will be asked to head directly to the quarantine hotel in which you booked a stay at. Once a negative test is confirmed, which could take upwards of 3 days, you will be able to exit the hotel and move on to your quarantine location, your home, your apartment, wherever you're planning to remain for the rest of your 14 mandatory quarantine period. And throughout your quarantine process, government officials will check in on you. And, if you've been paying attention, they may try and solicit sexual acts from you. But that's just kind of how this whole process goes if you guys have been following along with the news. So I think it was recently the Conservatives brought it up in Parliament about some of the issues that have came up there. Other points of interest as it relates to new travel measures. So when Trudeau first spoke about quarantine hotels, it was noted that travelers would have to pay for their post-arrival COVID-19 test. The Public Health Agency of Canada, PHAC, now tells the CBC that travelers will not be responsible for this cost. So again, it's fun. Every day we're switching up the rules. We want to keep you on your feet. And then hotel costs. So some people have wondered about what happens if a 3-night quarantine hotel stay is booked. But a negative test is received before the conclusion of the time period. According to the PHAC, it is up to each participating hotel whether or not it will offer a rebate if someone is allowed to check out before the end of the reservation. This sounds smart. Why wouldn't you leave it up to each of the hotels, even though you as the government choose the hotels? So you get to choose the winners, but then you let them make up the rules. Earlier, it was mentioned that each participating hotel can dictate its rate for a 3-night quarantine stay. So a report from CBC News shows just how different rates can be depending on where you stay. For instance, the Acclaim Hotel in Calgary costs $611, including taxes, for 3 nights. Meanwhile, the Westin Call Centre Vancouver Airport Hotel costs $1,827, including taxes. So that's literally 3 times the expense. Now, obviously, Vancouver and Calgary are different cities with different costs, and they probably do have different normal hotel rates, but it is fascinating that depending upon which city you land in, you could be looking at 3 times the expense. Now, let's talk about some exemptions. So not everyone traveling into Canada has to partake in a mandatory 14-day quarantine. Currently, essential workers, cross-border workers, and people receiving medical treatment do not need to follow this rule. These individuals are exempt from the hotel quarantine. Additionally, unaccompanied minors, as well as individuals traveling to Canada for a compassionate case like attending a funeral, are exempt from hotel quarantines as long as they receive pre-approval from the government. So failure to comply with these latest air travel measures can result in a maximum fine of $750,000 and or 6 months in prison. And finally, topic number 3, MPs call to suspend hotel quarantine policy due to the sexual assaults. So again, this story is from the CBC. There's a link in the video description down below. But a group of Conservative MPs are calling federal government to suspend the mandatory hotel quarantine policy after 2 reports of sexual assault. A Windsor, Ontario man has been arrested by Montreal police after it was alleged that he assaulted a woman at Laval, Quebec-based quarantine hotel. The unidentified woman told La Presse that the accused forced his way into her hotel room. He then proceeded to grab her before removing his own clothing and grabbing his genitals. She added that hotel security guards did not respond to her calls for help quick enough. Additionally, a Hamilton, Ontario man was arrested for sexually assaulting a woman during an at-home quarantine compliance check in nearby Oakville. On February 18th, the assailant, whose full name is Hermit, demanded money for a bogus fine. When the woman refused to pay, she was sexually assaulted. Hemant, who was hired and trained by Canada's federal public health agency to work as a security guard, has been charged with sexual assault and extortion. Sadly, Halton Regional Police say there may be other victims. A group of Conservative MPs, including health critic Michelle Rempel-Garnier and public safety critic Shannon Stubbs, issued a statement that in part read, "We are deeply angered to hear reports of sexual violence are happening during federally mandated quarantines by those supposed to be protecting the public health. The Liberal government must take action now. We call for the Liberals to suspend the hotel quarantine requirement until they have put measures in place to ensure the safety of Canadians, to institute a system for verifying at-home quarantine that doesn't involve security agents who have not yet been properly vetted." Now, this is a complicated situation. It doesn't matter what you do. You get a bunch of humans doing something, one of them is going to fuck it up. So in a way, I do think this is the Conservatives just kind of grandstanding and trying to make a political point. I'd much rather them really focusing on, is COVID-19 a big fucking deal? Let's actually focus on the big problem rather than trying to make a mountain out of a molehill here, right? Sexual assault, that's serious, that's unfortunate, it shouldn't be happening. But honestly, I'm sure that there's parole officers, police officers, members of the court that regularly we have these issues with, right? So again, any population of humans big enough, you're going to find bad actors. The bigger question is, why aren't we focusing on the bigger issues and the bigger problems here? Why aren't we actually having politicians really fight back? Now, there are a handful of them, and it's been crossing my mind whether you guys let me know in the comments. Would you like me to highlight some of the Canadian politicians that I think are actually leading the way? Almost no one's leading the way, but they're at least slightly stumbling in the right direction towards ending all this bullshit. Let me know in the comment section as well. Let me know, what politicians do you follow? Is there a politician in Canada you believe in? That would be fascinating to discover. Let me know in the comment section. So the Public Health Agency of Canada, PHAC, is responsible for recruiting security guards from private firms to consult or conduct compliance checks on travelers who have returned home from a foreign country. However, they do not have authority to arrest, ticket, or fine an individual. So essentially, they're essentially like a hall monitor. They really can't do shit to you. In an email to CBC News, the PHAC said it is reviewing its processes internally and with service providers to ensure the health and safety of all returning travelers to Canada. And topic number 4, people refusing quarantine measures. So let's get into what happens if you refuse to go through quarantine. So at Toronto's Pearson International Airport, several travelers have reportedly refused to comply with a mandatory 3-day hotel quarantine. This week, Peel Regional Police said most of these instances were resolved after travelers spoke with on-site officers. However, some people still didn't feel compelled to go to such a hotel and were fined $880 under Ontario's public health regulations. $880 sounds pretty cheap compared to a Vancouver hotel now that I'm actually price shopping. I didn't realize I'd be price shopping my quarantine options, but here we are. Police have confirmed that they will not detain individuals who break hotel quarantine rules unless a criminal offense is committed during the process. So again, they can't really do anything to you. They're just really going to confuse you and scare you. So again, you know how we all just naturally get scared the moment you see a cop in your rearview mirror just because we're taught to fear authority figures? Well, they're essentially just counting on that playing up even more so at the airport, because we're really scared at the airport because, it's such a militarized experience now. So they also said it was up to the Public Health Agency of Canada to fine disobeying travelers under the Quarantine Act. So commented Patrick Brown, the mayor of nearby Brampton, Ontario, by not being mindful that you can bring dangerous variants into the country, you're being selfish to your neighbors, to your city. I hope that people do abide by the new stricter guidelines. And so topic number 5 now, vaccine timelines for Ontarians. Are you looking to get the vaccine, and are you paying attention to the timelines that we're being told about? So on Wednesday, the province of Ontario announced it would launch an online portal and telephone-based system for booking COVID-19 vaccination appointments on March 15th. Yeah, I'm just going to be a bit of a dick here, but did we not kind of see this coming? A year ago now? It literally took us a year to get online vaccine. Could we not have been I know we don't have a vaccine today, but let's get the online portal done just so that when we got a vaccine, we can roll it out fast, or we're really just on that just-in-time inventory system here with the government. This news is brought forth by retired General Rick Hillier, the person responsible for leading the province's vaccine distribution. Hillier explained the delay in making such a portal available is due to the province's focus on vaccinating those who do not require an appointment. Okay. So this includes at-risk individuals as well as patients facing healthcare workers and long-term care center workers. When the new booking system goes live, Ontarians over the age of 80 will be the first group of people eligible to make appointments. I'm glad we're rolling out the online portal for the 80-plus-year-old crowd first. This makes complete sense to me. This should begin by the 3rd week of March. For those older Ontarians, their forecasted vaccine appointment windows are as follows. April 15th, vaccinations begin for people 75 years or older. So what happens if your birthday changes in these timelines? Because these are actually some long timelines. May 1st, that's when we get the 70-year-olds in. June 1st, 65-year-olds. And July 1st, the 60-year-olds can start to get their shots as well. But we all know by July 1st, the COVID won't exist anymore because it's summer. And all of a sudden, you can just go out and back to normal, and we all forget all that. Just a fascinating world we live in. Hillier added that essential workers should start getting their shots by the 1st week in May. However, it hasn't yet been determined who exactly from this category will qualify. As for individuals 60 years of age and younger who are not essential workers, Hillier remains unsure as to when shots will become available to Ontarians within this category. Realistically, when they're 62% effective, does it even matter? And he noted that it might not be until early summer before this topic can be further discussed. And now I joke when I say 62% effective and doesn't even matter, but obviously it matters to the pharmaceutical company. They're going to make millions of dollars off of these government contracts. So it is a big deal that those shots do get bought. It's just less of a big deal if they get injected into anyone. Separately, Dr. Isaiah Bach, an infectious disease expert who is Ontario's vaccine distribution task force, told CP24 that the timelines provided by Hillier were a worst-case scenario. He explained, take those dates with a giant grain of salt. That would be like the worst case scenario, like the wheels have fallen off the bus. That would be a very unlikely scenario to see it play out like that. When Hillier was asked about the federal government's commitment to all Canadians being able to receive a vaccine by the end of September, he didn't exactly give the sentiment his endorsement. Hillier said, "I'd love to say by Labor Day weekend, we are all going to have every single person in Ontario who is eligible and who wants a vaccine to have one. I'm a little bit reluctant to do so because it depends on the arrival of those vaccines." Now, topic number 6. This is a big day, guys. We've got a lot to cover. Keep throwing your comments. Love to see them in the comment section. So I know I see Cinetic, Dan, Cities, Sports, Bar and Grill. Awesome, guys. So topic number 6 is Canadian small business owes a collective $135 billion. So this is from Newswire. And so it has been quite clear for some time now that Canadian small business owners have been hit quite hard during this pandemic. And so according to the group's latest findings, and this is from the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses, CFIB, provided more detail about just how hard small businesses have been hit. On average, they have taken on about $170,000 debt per business thanks to COVID-19. After the CFIB adjusted its data to reflect the entire economy, it estimates that as of early February, all Canadian small businesses combined are in debt $135.1 billion. In July 2020, CFI believed the debt total could have been $117 billion. So we've seen it climb about, what's that work out to, $17 billion? Comments, Laura Jones, the executive vice president at CFIB, over the last 6 months, the average debt taken on by small businesses to deal with COVID-19 has grown significantly. While many businesses had previously reopened and were attempting to regain lost sales, the second wave and the restrictions that came with it are putting a massive wrench in an already slow recovery for small businesses. For the businesses who have taken on the debt, 76% believe it will take them over a year to repay it. Meanwhile, 11% don't believe they'll ever be able to repay the debt that came about because of COVID-19. When businesses were asked how long it could take for them to see normal profit levels again, 4 in 10 think it'll be at least a year from now. And topic number 7 is Adamson BBQ owner handed police bill for $187,000. So if you guys don't remember, the CBC and a bunch of local news outlets covered this in the GTA, right? There was the Etobicoke owner of the Adamson BBQ, and he essentially was fighting the lockdown, fighting the pandemic, and he was trying to open up his BBQ restaurant. So this led to a lot of mainstream and fringe media coverage, as well as a sizable maskless protest around his restaurant. So essentially it became a rallying cry for those that believed that this was bullshit. So police were continuously dispatched to the location for crowd control measures and to ensure public health measures were being adhered to. Other city officials were called on to change the locks on the restaurant. Subsequently, Skelly was charged with trespassing on his own property, intent to obstruct police because he wanted to get into his own property, violating indoor dining rules because it was his own property, holding an illegal gathering and operating a business without a license, even though he did have one. It was just COVID-19. Earlier this week, we learned the city of Toronto has issued Skelly a bill for $187,000 to cover the cost of police and city officials dispatched to his restaurant in November. It's been reported that the bill was originally forwarded to Skelly back in December and that payment by December 31st, 2020 was demanded. If this turns to be true, this is going to look very bad for the city of Toronto. Skelly has said he doubts the city will truly force him to pay the bill. And this is kind of the problem with everything, right? Like, we know that they're going to make this big song and dance about it. We know that he's probably not going to end up having to pay it, or if he does, he's going to get a GoFundMe that's going to cover it or cover it and more. So, like, we have always been at war with East Asia, guys. You guys just don't realize, or Eurasia, or whatever it was in 1984, the book. It's just absurd at this point in time. However, Brad Ross, Chief Communications Officer for the City of Toronto, explained to CBC News that the city is serious about having this bill paid by Skelly. There were very real costs associated with enforcing the public health orders to remain closed. By choosing not to abide by those orders, we had to take enforcement actions, and there are costs associated with that. Ross added that the bill is not specifically about the protest. It is about somebody who was opening a business in contravention of the provincial orders and regulations to remain closed during a public health emergency. When does it end? To date, Skelly has raised more than $337,000 for his legal defense. So he's already in the black from this. So Probably don't break out the violins for him, but you probably should break out the violins for every other small business owner that is being crushed by these oppressive measures. I don't want to see this weaponized against groups sort of writ large, which is why proceeding with caution and specificity will be important, she added. It looks like the city's not holding back any punches in its approach. Even if that isn't accurate accounting, I think that there are some questions that should be raised as to how what appears to be such an inflated number is the final balance. To be honest, that's probably not even inflated for the government. $187,000 for like 2 or 3 days of people doing something. I'm surprised it wasn't $1 million. There has to be accountability for those numbers. In terms of comparable cases, Ross couldn't cite another pandemic-specific instance that required such a bill to be levied. However, he did say handing out a bill like this, not unlike what happened when someone ignores the city's law as it relates to shoveling snow of one's own sidewalk, explained Ross. If you don't shovel, the city has to do that. And if you don't, we will pass that cost on, typically through your tax bill. So that's where we are today, guys. What a crazy, wacky world we live in. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions. Let me know if you think your thoughts and opinions even matter at this point in time. But I do appreciate engagement in the comment section because it's the only way the YouTube algorithm knows to share this, because otherwise they just look at our words and titles and assume that we're bad people because we talk about things like quarantine hotels, like COVID-19 vaccines, and all kinds of other things you're not supposed to talk about. It's weird, right? That like apparently it's the end of the world, but you're not supposed to talk about the end of the world. Anyways, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. I think this is enough doom and gloom, so I'm going to read your comments after this video, but I don't even want to ruin the rest of my day by even thinking about this. This is such fucking bullshit. Appreciate you guys, though, and we'll see you on Monday.